My son said I was a burden. I can't stay in my own $2.5 million house in California. Then, I gave him a real burden. They called me a burden. In my own home. The very house I spent my entire life building. The house worth $2.5 million in California, sitting on a hillside with views that real estate agents called breathtaking. My son, the boy I carried for 9 months, raised with blood and sweat, sacrificed every dream for, looked me in the eye one night and said, "Mom, maybe it's time you think about a nursing home. You're just getting in the way." That night, something inside me broke, but I didn't cry. No. Instead, I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, and I remembered every single hardship I had endured to raise him, every missed meal, every humiliation, every sacrifice that had carved pieces out of my soul so he could have a whole life. And then I decided, if I was such a burden, it was time to give him a real one. Let me share where it all started. I wasn't born into wealth, not even close. My parents were factory workers in a small town in Ohio. I grew up sharing a bedroom with 3 sisters, wearing hand-me-downs that had already been passed through 2 generations. We ate what we could afford, which usually meant potatoes and whatever meat was on sale. But I was happy. My mother taught me that happiness didn't come from what you had, it came from what you did with what you were given. When I was 22, I met Robert at a diner where I was waitressing. He was handsome, charming, and had dreams bigger than both of us combined. We married 6 months later in a courthouse ceremony. I wore a white dress from Goodwill that cost $8. 2 years later, John was born. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny, perfect creature, and thinking, I will give you everything I never had. I had no idea how much that promise would cost me. John was only 2 years old when Robert died. It was a car accident. Random, senseless. One moment I was a wife and mother building a life, and the next I was a widow with a toddler, $847 in the bank, and funeral expenses I couldn't afford. Robert's family blamed me, said if he hadn't married me, hadn't taken that delivery job to support us, he'd still be alive. They didn't help, not with money, not with John, not with anything, so I did what I had to do. I buried my grief in the same place I buried my husband, and I got to work. There were days when we had only bread and canned beans for dinner, days when I walked 5 miles to work because I couldn't afford gas. I worked 3 jobs at once, cleaning houses in the morning, waitressing in the evenings, and sewing clothes late into the night. My hands were never soft, they were always cracked, dry, scarred from chemicals and needles, and endless scrubbing. John never knew the hunger I felt when I skipped meals so he could have enough. He never saw the tears I shed behind bathroom doors after being humiliated by customers while waitressing, like the time Mrs. Henderson from the country club called me to help in front of her friends and made me reclean her already spotless floor because I had tracked in poor person smell. I stood there, on my knees, scrubbing that marble floor while they laughed and sipped champagne. But all John saw, every morning, was a smiling mother packing his lunch, tucking in his shirt, and whispering, "One day, you'll have the life I never had." School fees nearly crushed me. Every semester brought new expenses, field trips, class photos, book fairs, science projects. While other mothers casually wrote checks, I calculated every penny. I remember one night vividly. John came home with a permission slip for a school science fair. Entry fee, $25. I had only $18 left for the entire week's groceries. That night, after John went to bed, I sat at my old sewing machine until 3 a.m., stitching and mending clothes for neighbors. Mrs. Chen needed her curtains hemmed. Mr. Rodriguez needed his work pants patched. I took every job, no matter how small. My eyes burned. My fingers bled from where the needle had slipped. But by dawn, I had $32. The next morning, when I handed John the crisp $25 bill, his eyes sparkled with joy. "Thanks, Mom. I'm going to build the best volcano ever." He hugged me tightly, and I held him back, breathing in his shampoo, memorizing that moment. He didn't know my hands were blistered, or that I'd gone without dinner again. He didn't need to know. That was my job, to carry the weight so he could fly. When John turned 10, he asked for a birthday party. Just a small one, he said. A few kids from school, maybe pizza and a cake. I said yes before I even checked my bank account. How could I say no to those hopeful eyes? But when I looked at my finances that night, my stomach dropped. After rent, utilities, and groceries, I had $63 left. A party for 10 kids would cost at least $150. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the pawn shop and sold the only valuable thing I had left, my wedding ring. The man behind the counter barely looked at it before offering me $120. It's worth more than that, I whispered. He shrugged. That's my offer. I took it. John's party was perfect. Pizza soda, a homemade chocolate cake with his name in bright blue frosting. He laughed with his friends, played games, opened presents. At the end of the night, after everyone left, he hugged me and said, "This was the best birthday ever, Mom." I smiled and kissed his forehead, my ring finger bare. "I'm glad, sweetheart." Years rolled by. John was smart, ambitious, driven. He wanted to go to college, not just any college, but a good one, Stanford, UCLA, schools with names that made my heart swell with pride and terror at the same time, because tuition, it was a mountain I couldn't see the top of. But I'd promised him everything, hadn't I? So I worked harder. Nights blurred into mornings. I cleaned offices where people half my age barely acknowledged me. I took weekend shifts, scrubbing floors in hotels while other families went on vacations. I worked every holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, because holiday pay was time and a half. I stopped buying new clothes entirely, wore the same 3 outfits for 5 years. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. I shopped only at dollar stores and discount groceries, buying dented cans and die-old bread, and slowly, painfully, I saved. When the college acceptance letters came, John got into UC Berkeley with a partial scholarship. I cried when I read it, not from joy, though I was proud, but from the calculation I'd already done in my head. Even with the scholarship, we were still $30,000 short per year. I took out loans, I worked more hours, I sold my car and took the bus everywhere. I took on debt I knew would take decades to pay off. But John got his education. When his graduation finally came, I couldn't afford a fancy dress. I wore the same faded blouse I had worn for years, patched at the sleeves. My shoes were from Goodwill, the soles held together with glue. I sat in the bleachers with other families in designer clothes, families who'd flown in from vacation homes, families who'd never had to choose between electricity and groceries. But when I saw him walk across that stage, in his cap and gown, diploma in hand, the applause thundering around me, I felt like every sacrifice had been worth it. I cried that day, not from sadness, but from relief. My son had made it. After the ceremony, John found me in the crowd. He was beaming, surrounded by friends. "Mom," he hugged me quickly. "We're going to dinner with some people from my dorm. You don't mind, right? You understand." It wasn't a question. I nodded and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. You go celebrate. You earned it." I watched him walk away with his friends, their laughter fading into the distance. I ate alone at a Denny's that night, a $7 meal that felt like a splurge. But he was happy. That was enough, wasn't it? After college, John found work quickly. His degree opened doors. His career took off. He moved to San Francisco, got promotions, started making real money. I was proud, so proud. I still lived frugally, still saved every penny, investing carefully with advice I picked up from financial newsletters and a kind librarian who taught free workshops on basic investing. I was smart, careful. I bought a small rental property when the market crashed, then another. I flipped them, saved, reinvested. After decades of work, decades of sacrifice and calculation, I finally managed to buy my dream house in California, $2.5 million. It was a sprawling, sunlit home in the hills outside Los Angeles, with a garden full of roses and wide windows that caught the morning light. There was a kitchen with marble countertops where I could finally cook without the counters being cluttered with unpaid bills, a bedroom with a view of the valley. It wasn't just a house, it was proof that I, a single mother with nothing, had built something lasting. I thought this house would be where I grew old, surrounded by my son, maybe grandchildren, filled with laughter and love. I thought, finally, I could rest, but I was wrong. It started when John met her, Melissa. She was 28, 12 years younger than him, beautiful in that effortless way some women are, with long blonde hair and a smile that photographers would call radiant. When he first told me about her, his voice was different, excited, alive. "Mom, she's amazing. I really think she's the one." When he finally brought her to meet me, I welcomed her with open arms. I cooked her favorite meals. She mentioned once she liked Italian, so I made homemade lasagna from scratch. I prepared the guest room with fresh linens and flowers. I even gave her small gifts, a silk scarf I'd been saving, a bottle of perfume I'd never opened. I thought, finally, My son has found someone to share his life with. Maybe she'll be the daughter I never had. But the very day she stepped into my home, things changed. It was subtle at first, the way she looked around the house, appraising everything with sharp eyes, the way she whispered to John in corners, their conversations stopping when I entered a room, and John, my John, began treating me differently. It was subtle at first, rolling his eyes when I spoke, ignoring my questions, spending more time whispering with Melissa than sharing meals with me. "Mom, can you give us some space?" he said one evening when I tried to join them for a movie. I backed away, confused, hurt. "Of course, I'll be in my room if you need anything." The small disrespects grew louder. "Mom, can you do the laundry for us? Melissa isn't used to doing it herself." "Mom, Melissa doesn't like the smell of your cooking. Can you just order food instead? Here's some money." He handed me 2 20s like I was the housekeeper. "Mom, don't sit with us when we're watching movies, okay? We want privacy." I swallowed the hurt, told myself it was temporary, that they were young, in love, adjusting to living together. But soon, Melissa began treating me like a maid. "Margaret, the bathroom needs cleaning." Not, "Would you mind or could you please," just statements, commands. "Margaret, could you make us coffee? And maybe some of those pastries from the bakery downtown." "Margaret, don't you think that outfit is a bit old-fashioned? John's colleagues are coming over tonight. Maybe wear something less visible. In my own home. And John, my John, the boy I'd given everything for, never defended me. He joined in. "Mom, seriously, can you just try to stay out of the way when we have guests?" I nodded, smiled, retreated to my room like a ghost in my own house. One evening, 3 months after they'd moved in, I overheard them in the living room. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was just coming downstairs to get water, and their voices carried through the hallway. Melissa's voice was sharp, irritated. "John, we can't keep living like this. Your mom is everywhere. She's old. She's slowing us down. We can't start a family with her hanging around. What if she gets sick? What if she falls? We'll be stuck taking care of her." Silence. Then John's voice, low but clear. I know. She's just a burden now. Maybe it's time we talk to her about moving out. Maybe a nursing home or assisted living. Something affordable. We need this house for ourselves, for our future." Melissa's laugh was soft, almost tender. "Exactly. This house is perfect for kids. The backyard, the space. Your mom had her turn. Now it's ours." Those words cut deeper than any wound I'd ever felt. Burden. After everything. After every night I went hungry so he could eat. After every job I worked until my hands bled. After selling my wedding ring for his birthday party. After decades of debt so he could have his education. A burden. I stood there in the dark hallway, my hand pressed against the wall for support, and something inside me crystallized. Not sadness, not anymore. Clarity. I didn't cry that night. I simply sat in the dark in my bedroom, staring at the walls of my $2.5 million home, and I let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. And then I decided, if they thought I was a burden, I'd give them a burden they'd never forget. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I quietly gathered every important document, the deed to the house, the mortgage papers paid off years ago, the bank account statements, the investment portfolios. The house was in my name alone. John had never contributed a single dollar to it. I contacted a lawyer, Marcus Chen, an old friend whose son I'd tutored in math when we were both struggling single parents. "Margaret," he said when I explained what I wanted, "are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Together, we drew up papers, not just to sell the house, but to ensure that the proceeds would be placed in a trust that John could never access. Every penny would go to charities supporting single mothers and children's education programs. The charities I wished had existed when I was drowning. "There's also the matter of making sure they can't contest this," Marcus said carefully. "I'll need to document everything. The fact that the house is solely in your name, that you purchased it with your own funds, that John is not listed as a dependent nor do whatever needs to be done." For 3 weeks, I acted completely normal. I cooked their meals when they asked. I cleaned. I smiled politely. I made myself small and quiet, just like they wanted. I let them believe I was the helpless, fragile old woman they thought I was. And then I made the call to the real estate agent, on a sunny Tuesday morning. while John and Melissa were both at work. The real estate agent arrived. She was a sharp woman named Diana, 50s, with kind eyes. When I told her I was selling and why, she paused. "You're sure?" she asked gently. "Completely." "Then let's make sure you get every penny you deserve." The for sale sign went up at 10 a.m. I sat in my kitchen, drinking tea, watching it get planted in the front yard. The afternoon sun caught the letters. For sale. Open house. Sunday smiled. When John came home at 6 p.m., I heard his car door slam from inside the house. His footsteps were heavy, fast. The door burst open. "Mom," his voice echoed through the hallway. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Why is there a for sale sign in front of the house?" I set down my teacup slowly and walked into the living room. John was standing there, face red, still in his work clothes. Melissa was right behind him, arms crossed, eyes narrow. "This is my house," I said calmly, "and I've decided to sell it." "You can't do that." Melissa's voice was shrill. "We live here. You live here as my guests. Guests who've made it very clear I'm no longer welcome in my own home." John's face twisted. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. What are you talking about?" I looked him straight in the eyes for the first time in months. "You called me a burden, John. In my own home. The home I bought with money I earned. The home you never contributed to. You said I was in the way." His mouth opened, then closed. You weren't supposed to hear that, but I did." "Mom, we were just talking. We didn't mean you meant every word." My voice was steady, cold. "And since you both feel I'm such a burden, I've decided to relieve you of me, and this house." I handed him the papers Marcus had prepared. "The sale is almost final. I've accepted an offer. We close in 30 days. Melissa snatched the papers, scanning them frantically. "This is insane. Where are we supposed to go? I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're both young and capable, after all." John's face went from red to pale. "Mom, you can't do this. This house is worth millions. You're just going to sell it." "Yes, and the money." His voice was smaller now, uncertain. I smiled, not warmly. "The money is going into a trust. It will fund scholarships for children who've lost parents. It will help single mothers pay for groceries and rent. It will go to women who are working 3 jobs and wondering how they'll afford their child's field trip. It will go to people who understand what sacrifice means." The silence in the room was deafening. "You'd do this," John's voice cracked. "You'd do this to your own son." I stepped closer to him, and for a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who hugged me after his birthday party, the one who smiled at his graduation. But that boy was gone. "No, John," I said softly, "you did this to yourself." The next 30 days were cold. John and Melissa barely spoke to me. They moved around the house like angry ghosts, slamming doors, whispering furiously in their room. John tried reasoning with me once. "Mom, please, we can work this out. We didn't mean those things. Just, don't sell the house, please." But his eyes weren't sorry. They were calculating. He wanted the house, not me. "The papers are signed, John. It's done." Melissa was crueler. "You're a selfish old woman," she hissed one morning. "You're just bitter and alone, and you want everyone else to be miserable too." I didn't respond. Her words were empty. By the time closing day arrived, they'd moved out. No goodbye, no apology, just gone. I moved into a quiet, sunlit apartment by the ocean in Santa Barbara, a 2-bedroom with a balcony where I could watch the waves. That it cost a fraction of what the house did. The rest of the money, $2.3 million after taxes and fees, went into the trust, exactly as I'd planned. The first scholarship went to a 70-year-old girl named Sophia, whose mother worked as a hotel cleaner and whose father had died when she was 3. When Marcus called to tell me, his voice was warm. She cried when she found out. "Margaret," she said, "it means she can go to college now. Her mother too." I cried then. Happy tears. My apartment is peaceful, simple, mine. I filled it with books, plants, and the sound of the ocean. No footsteps storming the hallways. No whispers of being a burden. No sacrifices for people who didn't value them. I started painting, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for. I joined a book club, made friends with other women my age who had their own stories of survival and strength. John tried calling once. 6 months after I'd moved, I let it ring. He left a voicemail. "Mom, I wanted to say, I've been thinking about everything, and I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't realize how much you'd done for me, how much you'd given up, and I want to make things right. Can we talk, please? His voice was different, smaller, maybe genuine, but I didn't call back. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday he'll truly understand what he lost. But that day isn't today. But the first time in my life, I'm not sacrificing for someone else. Asterisk, asterisk. I'm living for me. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of waves. I make myself breakfast, real breakfast, with fresh fruit and good coffee. I sit on my balcony and watch the pelicans dive into the water. I think about the women and children who are being helped by the trust. I get letters sometimes, from mothers who received grants, from kids who got scholarships. Each letter is a piece of healing, because sacrifice is only meaningful when it's valued. And I finally learned that I deserve to be valued too. As I sipped my tea, watching the waves crash against the shore, I whispered to myself, never mistake kindness for weakness, and never forget the biggest burden a child can carry is the guilt of betraying a mother who gave them everything.